Island Lights is a brief glimpse of 155 years of lighthouse history, basically Australian, more concisely Tasmanian. During early settlement of Australia, every ship from England brought essential supplies and convicts for this young country. And with each one lost to dark seas, the need became more essential for navigational aids. Not all the ships lost were due to poor navigational aids or lack of lighthouses, but hundreds were, and many a captain has cursed the darkness as his ship has foundered in unlighted waters. Lighthouse keepers have played a major role in ensuring the safety of coastal shipping from as far back as ancient Egyptian times. Although technology has changed since then, the roles of the lighthouse keeper has remained as important, if not more so, with the increased use of shipping. The need for manning in the early days was due to the lack of technology for automation, but also if a shipping disaster did occur, the keepers could offer assistance. The early oil and kerosene lamps also needed constant attention for adjustment of their brightness, and a clockwork mechanism had to be kept wound up to rotate the light. Although a good number of Tasmanian lights are now automated, they still need periodic maintenance and repair. This never-ending task is carried out by the navigational aid mechanics from the Commonwealth Department of Transport. It could be said that these men are the unsung heroes of the lighthouse story. During 1985-86, the department controlled a network of some 380 different forms of navigational aid, and every one of these lights flashes in a different sequence, enabling ships to identify which light it is. This is known as the character of the light. These facilities make up a navigation network that encircle Australia from Darwin in the far north to Matsaika Island in the far south. The first lighthouse in Tasmania was the Iron Pot Light, built in 1832 at the entrance to the Derwent River, 22 kilometres from Hobart. Sailing ships of that era had great difficulty in navigating their way into the river. After a near-fatal disaster involving the Princess Royal, a ship carrying 300 women settlers, the public outcry was such that the light was finally erected at Iron Pot Rock. In November 1832, the light was erected by Lieutenant Hill and a party of 15 convicts and freemen. Built at an elevation of 20 metres above sea level, it could be seen from a ship 24 kilometres away. In 1885, new keepers' quarters were built to improve the harsh living standards. 10 years later, a gale of unprecedented force blew up, carrying away most of the external fittings, leaving kelp and seaweed hanging from the highest reaches of the tower. In 1920, the fixed light was replaced by an acetylene flashing light. Although the light's visibility was reduced to 18 kilometres, it could now operate without constant attention, and the light keepers were withdrawn in that year. In 1977, the light was further upgraded to solar-powered batteries and has operated effectively ever since, under the control of the Hobart Marine Board. Moving further to the south, through a myriad of channels and waterways, we come to Cape Bruni Lighthouse. This light was established in 1838 at the southern entrance to the Don Tricasto Channel. Bruni Island was discovered by Abel Tasman and further explored by Furneaux, Cook, Bligh and Hayes. This lighthouse was the third built by convict labour in Tasmania and is the oldest tower still under Commonwealth Department of Transport control. Bruny Island is also a great spot for sightseeing tourists, as it affords tours of the light by appointment with the keeper. Standing 13 metres high, the tower is constructed of masonry rubble. A cast iron stairway was added in 1903, and in later years the original 4-wick Trinity burner was upgraded to 110-volt DC power supply. Chance Brothers of Birmingham, England made most of the original prisms and housings used in Tasmania by hand. Each carefully crafted piece was numbered prior to shipment from England to the lighthouse site in Tasmania. Matsika, the most southerly light in Australian waters, was established in 1891. This beautiful island was discovered in 1642 by Abel Tasman, and with its covering of white tea tree flowers, the island reminded him of a sugarloaf, thereby suggesting its name. Matsika is Dutch for a measure of sugar. Located 11 kilometres off the southernmost point of Tasmania, this rugged outpost abounds with native flora and fauna, and is one of the 3 most southerly landfalls in the world. In 1890, J&R Duff of Hobart were contracted to build the 12.8 metre high lighthouse at a cost of £8,473. Included in the contract was the construction of the 3 keepers' houses, 366 metres of double haulage way and a landing stage used for resupply by sea. The haulage way and landing stage is now overgrown and no longer used, but former lighthouse keeper Alan Levings remembers when this was the only way to get anything on or off the island.
Well, the ship would supply it. They'd come in their workboats again, put the gear on a crane, a little crane that was on there, would lift it onto the wharf. And then there was a little haulage way there, but it was only about half the length of the one at Tasman Island. But still very tricky. And everything went up in trolleys again up to the top. And then from there it was carted by Land Rover right around a track cutting about a 45-degree slope to the lighthouse and the quarters. I suppose that would be about a mile. How they ever cut this road in around the side, I don't know.
The fortnightly supply and mail run by fishing boat was replaced by helicopters in 1975. Major resupplying is done every few months to bring the necessities to keep the light and lighthouse keepers going.
Yeah, that goes on about every 3 months. We get our fuel and gas and some oil supplies, you know. Without, the place just wouldn't exist.
Supplies for Matsika Island are transported by road to Research Bay, some 20 minutes flight from Matsika. The aviation fuel for the helicopter and diesel and gas for the island will be unloaded, wind permitting, from the back of the truck and transported directly to Matsika Island.
We emptied the drums into 2 staging tanks here at the helipad, and then they're drained to the fuel farm down at the engine room. While the chopper's bringing the stuff in, we drain it down so that we can return our empties.
Supplies flown in by the helicopter allow this visual landmark to sustain its welcoming beam for all seagoers. in this rugged and isolated part of the world. In earlier days, the light energy did not come from diesel-generated electricity, but from kerosene or acetylene. No electric motors were used to rotate the massive housing containing the prism configuration. A clockwork mechanism comprising of weights, pulleys and cogs was once used in all revolving lights in Tasmania. This is the only one still in working order, but it's no longer used. Owen Barrett, lighthouse keeper, explains.
Well, the idea of this clockwork here is to make the light revolve. We've got a chain that goes down the centre of the tower with heavy weights on the bottom, and as these chains pull down, as the weights pull down, it makes the cogs turn. We engage the cogs with the aid of a clutch on the inside of the clockwork there. We have a governor wheel to control the speed of the light. It's imperative that it has the right speed. All lights got different characters, different speeds. Now that chain, as it goes down, lasts about 50 minutes. And every 50 minutes you have to wind it up again to keep your light going through the night. So you have to work probably 3-hour shifts to keep it going.
There are 2 permanent keepers on Matsyker. Every evening they start the light off on its nightly vigil, and each morning, before the sun gets too high, they pull the heavy curtains around the prisms. If this was not done, the magnification of the sun's rays through the prisms would cause fire, or even worse, a meltdown of the irreplaceable prisms. Between running the light and the general day-to-day maintenance, both keepers are kept hard at work.
It's shared equally, our duties. One week Owen's on light up, the other week I'm on light up. We do our weather ops the same. And then we work together during the day on normal maintenance.
The men here enjoy the time to relax and take in the magnificent part of the island. But what about the families of the keepers, especially the children? How do they handle the life on a lonely island?
The children love it here. Yeah. They find it a bit hard for a while when they go to town, and when they come back, they want to get back to town again. It takes them a while to settle into it again, but they don't really miss life in town, and they've got what they like to do down here.
Cape Sorel Lighthouse, at the entrance to Macquarie Harbour on Tasmania's central west coast, is regarded as the lady of Australian lighthouses because of its hourglass figure. It was built in 1899 at a cost of £5,580. Standing over 30 metres high on a reserve of over 53 hectares, Cape Sorel Lighthouse is the 3rd tallest in Australia. Before the light was automated, the lighthouse keeper and family sustained a remote and lonely existence on Tasmania's west coast, renowned for its unpredictable weather conditions, with the nearest township being Strawn, over 30 kilometres away. The light was unmanned on the 24th of March 1971, with all outbuildings being removed and the original prisms being replaced by the modern-day 12-volt lamp, deriving its power from batteries kept charged by a wind generator. It was in this area that Abel Tasman made a landfall, and on the 24th of November 1642, named the land before him Anthony Van Diemen's Land. Island is the first island we come to as we journey up the west coast and away from the Tasmanian mainland. It's the main mass in the Hunter group of islands, 5 kilometres off the northwestern tip of the Tasmanian mainland at Woolnorth Point. An automatic beacon was established on the western shore of the island in 1924 and later upgraded to be battery electric powered and housed in a fiberglass tower. To the northwest of Hunter Island lies Three Hummock Island. The light station was also established here in 1924, but in 1971 it too was converted to battery electric operation. Bass and Flinders, during their circumnavigation, spotted Three Hummock Island, and it was here they proved that the mainland of Australia was separated from Van Diemen's Land by a strait, Bass Strait. King Island, an island placed in a box and often not thought of as part of Tasmania, but steeped with early pioneering Tasmanian history, lies at the western entrance to Bass Strait. It's a place where rushing city life has passed them by and a relaxed island lifestyle has endured. King Island's waters have seen well over 60 recorded shipwrecks through the years, making it a major maritime graveyard for divers to search for old wrecks. There are now 5 lights to warn of the dangers of the reefs and rocks to all that sail these waters. And the 4 lights on King Island itself are the responsibility of Alan Levings, the only lightkeeper on the island. Alan is based at Curry and must travel by road to each of the 4 lights.
The 4 lights that are on the island, there's Cape Wickham Lighthouse. Cape Wickham's up in the north end of the island. Curry's about halfway along. Stokes' Point's right down the other end south, and Cumberland's about east over near the place called Grassy. They are only little flashing units, Cumberland and Stokes's, but used a lot by the fishermen especially.
Cape Wickham was established in 1861 and constructed out of granite found nearby. 4 keepers were here to keep the kerosene lamp burning, and many survivors of the wrecks around this area were pleased to see this isolated outpost, which once boasted a church house and various outbuildings. Only the overgrown foundations remain now, and the 48.2 metre tower, which is the tallest light in Australia.
It's about 229 steps in the tower. It has a wooden staircase with 20 steps to a landing. It's got lots of landings. In the tower you test the light, check the gearbox for oil and everything's working properly, change globes at the prescribed times, clean the prisms and the lantern panes, and generally have a look around and see everything's in order, and clean the tower and probably touch up paintwork.
Cape Wickham has 3 240-volt diesel generators, which use 3,000 litres of diesel around every 2 months. These power the light and a radio beacon, which operates with 2 other points, all giving a Morse signal to give ships a fix on their position. Lighthouses seem to be placed in an exacting position to capture all the beauty surrounding them, and Cape Wickham is no exception.
Beautiful sunsets down there, and it's all sort of rolling grassland around it. Very, very pretty and green, as long as you don't stand on snakes. There's lots of snakes around the island, around down there anyway.
The Curry Harbour Light stands facing the Indian Ocean on the western shore of King Island. It consists of a central column with 5 supporting struts and commenced operation in 1880.
The Curry Harbour Lighthouse was built on account of the fact that the ships used to often run into the island further down before they got to Cape Wickham. And in fact, while they were talking about building one at Curry, one hit on the rocks below where they were talking about building it. So they built it, and it was brought out from England, before they built it of course, it was brought out from England in 360 pieces, and it's made of iron and cast iron and assembled. It's got big iron screws that go into the sand for about 30 to 40 feet. A lot of money's just been spent on doing it,
Some may think that being a lightkeeper is an easy task, but for Alan, the constant travel from Curry to the silent sentinels is a never-ending job. For if one light was to go out, there could be yet another ship to hit this treacherous island graveyard.
I've often asked captains, do they really still use lighthouses, you know? Oh, they go all serious and say, oh, yeah, too right, you know, oh, yeah. We check everything out on them. Yeah. That's nice to know, at least. Yeah. But it's quite surprising, really, in this modern day and age, that they actually really still seriously use them.
For Alan, his 19 years in the lighthouse keeping service is one filled with memories.
It's certainly been a varied life, quite interesting, but not as interesting as it used to be. Very frustrating at times. I suppose taken overall, it's been a pretty good life.
Despite the relative comforts of modern day lightkeeping, Alan and men like him still need that elusive human quality which allows one to endure solitude and isolation. Alan, like all keepers, reveals a latent warmth when he talks about his light.
Because it's an actual visual thing. And they actually know that when they see it, that it actually is there.
The northwest coast of Tasmania is home to many fishing and shipping ports. To cater for this busy coast, numerous navigational aids have been constructed. Highfield Point Light was established in 1908 on a site 4 kilometres north of Stanley. Its time-worn wooden tower was replaced in 1981 by a fiberglass one. The original is now situated in a park in the township of Stanley. Rocky Cape Light was established in 1968 to guide ships in and out of Port Latter, used primarily for exporting iron ore from the West Coast mines. A distinct feature of this light is that it flashes on longer than it's off. Further east, near Wynyard, situated atop cliffs, is Table Cape Light, established in 1888. The original fuel was oil, but in 1920, when conversion to acetylene gas was effected, the light was automated and therefore unmanned. Since 1979, the light has operated off 240-volt main supply with a battery standby. Round Hill Point Light was established in 1923 to guide shipping into Burnie, the busiest port on the northwest coast. Situated as it is beside the major highway into Burnie, this light lends itself as an intriguing landmark day and night to all travellers passing by. Mersey Bluff Lighthouse is located in the city of Devonport and was established in 1889. It stands 12.8 metres high and is painted white with red vertical stripes. The lighthouse is visited by many tourists coming into the state because Devonport berths Tasmania's only interstate passenger ferry, the Able Tasman. At the head of the Tamar River, some 50 kilometres north of Launceston, Tasmania's second largest city, is Low Head Lighthouse. Established in 1833, it's the second oldest lighthouse in the state. Because the Tamar River was often enveloped in fog and the light beam had some difficulty fully penetrating it, a warning signal was installed in 1941 in a large outbuilding closest to the waterfront.
Right, well, this is the foghorn, and this plant was made obsolete in 1973. The shipping rather had no further use for it. They have more modern techniques now of keeping themselves off the rocks. This was operated by this electric motor, which in turn operated the compressor, which pumped air up into these two big tanks. We worked on a pressure of 30 pounds per square inch, and having brought the tanks up to pressure, we then switch onto this motor on the wall and open the valve on that motor, and that allowed the air to go through to the foghorn, which is on the top of the building outside. We have 3 blasts in 30 seconds with a 20-second interval between the group of 3. 5-second interval between each blast. And it was very, very noisy and not very pleasant to be in here when it was operating. That's about all I can tell you about that. Take a look at the light now.
14 years after the fog plant operation was stopped, the Federal Department of Transport have made plans to upgrade the somewhat deteriorated machinery to allow tourists to see and hear how the foghorn once operated. Another warning signal at low head, besides the main light, is a red sector light. If a ship can see this light, it knows it's too close to danger and must head further out to sea.
This red sector light is a warning light for Hebe Reef, which is named after a ship that went down on it, and it's just a stationary red light. The main light is at the top. We'll go up and have a look at that now. Well, this is the main light, and we switch on in the evening, a quarter of an hour before sunset, and we switch off in the morning. It can be operated automatically, but we still operate this one manually. Originally it was a kerosene light, and then electrified in 1941, and now we have a new system of mechanics which are more modern. Anyway, I'll switch the light on and you can see how it operates. As I say, we switch the light on every evening, quarter of an hour before sunset, and we switch it on manually so that we can check that the alarm system is in order, and we'll ring down at the houses if anything should go wrong with the light. It doesn't look very bright at the moment, but in the darkness I can show you it's a very bright light. That's about all that I can tell you about it. It can be seen for 18 miles out to sea, that's to the horizon, and we have a spare globe in there. If we get a globe failure, the mechanism trips and the spare globe comes into focus and lights up. In the event of a power failure, we have downstairs a standby generator and motor which comes on automatically and rings the alarm. We still come up and check it, of course, make sure everything is operating properly. And switch off in the morning and again check that the mechanism is all working correctly. And that's about all there is to it.
Further east, past long beaches of white sand, lying 5 kilometres off the northeastern tip of Tasmania, is Swan Island. On the northernmost point of the island, convicts constructed a lighthouse of stone. The year was 1845, making this lighthouse the earliest of the Tasmanian Bass Strait lights. A government review of manned lighthouses in 1983, called Lighthouses, Do We Keep the Keepers?, instigated the demanding of a number of Australian lighthouses. Swan Island Lighthouse was the only Tasmanian one to be unmanned. Andy Gregory is the last lightkeeper on the island and leaves today. You could be forgiven for thinking this was an island lying off northern Queensland with sand-drenched beaches and a holiday resort atmosphere. But to people like Andy, it's an essential part of life. Swan Island, like most island weather stations, is the boating person's eyes to the sea. It's not just the bigger ships that use the weather reports, it's also the small fishing boat operators. For them, reports by many of the manned light stations ensure that they'll know the conditions before they risk their boat and crew to the perils of the ocean, like many of the seafarers before them that didn't have this service. Andy's reports every 3 hours are an essential role, albeit a small one, to the Weather Bureau's report for Tasmanian waters. But his report may be crucial.
Hello, Swan Island. Yeah, it's my last day. I'm pulling out tomorrow, Murray.
If only this light had been established in 1779 for the sailors of the Sydney Cove, the first recorded shipwreck in Australian waters. It ran aground after much difficulty on the later named Preservation Island, which lies northeast of Swan Island, on the 8th of February 1779. The light here was the same as Goose Island. It was later updated in the same way from oil to kerosene and then to electricity, and now unmanned. Although the island boasts 3 maintained early century houses, it's now privately owned, except for a small reserve where the light and associated buildings are housed. With every island come responsibilities. You have to maintain it to your employer's standards and also work hand in hand with your local government's National Parks and Wildlife Service to accept all the wildlife on the island, even if this does include tiger snakes. But for Andy Gregory, all these things and more have made it part of his job. For he and his family, living at the entrance to one of the world's roughest shipping straits has been a memorable career, and one he's gladly accepted.
Lonely nights I've sat in this tower, willing away the lonely hour. I know these round walls have seen so many, but none of these would have thoughts so many. A few years to some is a long, long time, but to me, the years have been sublime. The time has come for me to go. The day it comes, I hope it won't show. The times I've had, the memories I hold, will keep me happy till I'm old. A lightkeeper's end is a sad, sad thing, and nobody in this world will feel it but him. To some, the life is so lonely and bleak, but to me, the opposite is harder to meet.
Point, Craggy Island, Cat Island and Cape Barren Island are the lights which surround Flinders Island off the northeast of Tasmania. Each of these is very similar in operation, with 12-volt lamp systems and fiberglass towers. None are manned. Every 6 months, or when a breakdown occurs, they're serviced by Tasmanian Navaid mechanics. This is Cape Barren Island, home for the famous Cape Barren geese. This high and rocky island has a colourful past, with many historical associations with early sealers and a number of shipwrecks. To the northwest lies Goose Island. It was once manned by 2 keepers, but is now fully automated. Sir John Franklin, Lieutenant Governor of Tasmania, directed the building of this lighthouse in 1846 with the use of convict labour. Located in Bank Strait, where it merges with Bass Strait, Goose Island is part of the Furneaux Group, and together with Swan Island Light, guides shipping through the eastern end of Bass Strait. The lighting equipment used in this light differed from that which was in general use at the time. The light had silvered mirrors as reflectors. The system was also in use at Swan Island Light. The original equipment was replaced in 1931 by acetylene gas, and the light was demanned. Goose Island is often inundated with bad weather from Bass Strait, and this caused a tragedy on March 22nd, 1922. The supply boat had loaded the last supplies for the island with the 2 keepers on their small boat to transport back to the island. But on their way back to shore, the boat overturned, drowning both keepers and leaving the wives and children to man the light until the next supply boat would be back, or they could get a message to civilization. Both men are buried in the island's graveyard. This is the Cape-class vessel MV Cape Don, which with 2 others of the same design carry out major work on all Australian lighthouses. They're based in different parts of Australia. With its fully equipped workshop and crew of engineers and mechanics, these highly skilled technicians are trained in all facets of lighthouse maintenance and repair, from the oldest to the most up-to-date computer-programmed lights. More often than not, these men have to endure long periods of separation from home and family, and often under Spartan conditions. Cape Don is currently working its way around Tasmanian Lights, with its first stop being Deal Island in the Kent Group in eastern Bass Strait, 76 kilometres southeast of Wilson's Promontory. Deal is the largest island in the Kent Group. Although Deal Island is in Tasmanian waters, it's controlled by the Federal Department of Transport Victorian Division, who supply a work party of NavAid mechanical and engineering technicians. For maintenance work for the lights closer to Tasmania, a work party from the Hobart branch is used. During the visit to Deal, they're constructing 2 new light beacons on the nearby islands of North East and South West, as the Deal Island light is often obscured by fog because of its elevation. At over 300 metres above sea level, it's the highest lighthouse in Australia. Construction of the light began in 1846 as a joint venture between the colonies of Tasmania, Victoria and New South Wales. It became operational in 1848. Deal Island has seen many shipwrecks over the years, even after the lighthouse was in place. For the Cape-class vessel to get supplies ashore, they use the benefits of an onboard lark. This amazing defence-type vehicle is lowered off the ship to make transportation a breeze as it floats, moves through water, and upon reaching land, powers its way over the terrain to its destination. Once again, helicopters are used from Victoria for the supply of food every 2 months and mail every fortnight, the same as Matsika Island. Helicopters are also used to transport all the building materials and work parties necessary for construction of the 2 new beacons. Weather is an important factor with their tight construction schedule. A few bad days could stop the helicopters from flying and seriously delay completion. For the lighthouse keepers at this time, it's very busy, with the influx of people working on the island. Head lighthouse keeper, Stan Gray.
It's extra work, I wouldn't like to call it pressure. It's one of those things that normally, I mean this year has been a little different with the lights being put on the other island, but normally it's a 2.5 to 3 day operation. And you sort of look forward to the ship coming, but by the time he's ready to go, you're glad to see the last of him, of course. But basically, it's just another annual visit from somebody. You sort of look the crew over and see if any of them have been before. Quite often they haven't, of course, but it's just part and parcel of the job. It's a bit like Christmas. I mean, after they're gone, you start ripping the tops off boxes to see what's there. But basically, it's certainly no pressure involved in it. I mean, there's not a great deal of pressure involved in this job unless you want to make it that way. I mean, there are odd occasions when things go wrong. I mean, let's face it, if that light goes out tonight, well, you know, that's pressure because it's got to go back on again. I mean, that's what we're being paid for, is to keep that light operating. And whatever else doesn't get done, that's got to be done. And it takes priority over everything and anything on the station. if you're not interested in keeping the light going, what the hell are you in the job for?
Back aboard the ship, the galley crew are busy preparing the evening meal for 47 people. The ship will be moored off Deal Island for a week before moving on to Swan Island, so a varied menu is essential. After the meal, there's always friendship to be rekindled, and even a game of miniature golf. With all aboard, it's time for the captain and crew to sail the ship to the next destination.
Friendships. Thank you.
The Cape Don will visit another 3 lights through the next month, and each will require different maintenance to be carried out. Located at the northern end of the Bay of Fires, on Tasmania's northeast coast, stands Eddystone Point Lighthouse, perhaps one of the prettiest lighthouses in Tasmania. The idea for the lighthouse was proposed in 1879, but work did not commence until 1887, as roads were not through to this isolated region and the transportation of construction material was possible only by sea. It was decided to build the light tower and keepers' quarters of granite. Stonemasons brought out from Ireland began their 2.5-year job quarrying the stone from the abundant supply at Eddystone Point. The sole lightkeeper at Eddystone Point is John Denman. He and his family have lived in one of the granite-built houses for over 6 years.
The tower and the quarters are built out of granite. It's local stone from the beachfront down below us here. They used to quarry the stone in an unusual sort of a way. They'd drill holes in the stone and place oak pegs into it and water it. Overnight the oak would swell and the stone would split. And the granite itself cannot be blasted. It just shatters. It's a very dense stone.
The quarry, a short walk from the lighthouse, can still be seen 100 years after quarrying began. The drill marks in the rock where the water-soaked oak stakes were hammered in prior to the heavy granite sheet splitting off can be seen as a reminder of early quarrying techniques. Another interesting facet of the lighthouse is the way in which the huge prism structure is fixed to the pedestal. Weighing around 2.5 tonnes, the whole structure actually floats in a cast iron bath filled with mercury, which makes rotating the light a little easier than most.
It's virtually friction-free. It's only a small motor which drives it, a 1/4 horse motor, electric motor, 240 mains power. And the prisms themselves, which weigh approximately 2.5 tonne, actually are suspended in the mercury.
Changing a light globe to most people would seem to be quite a safe and simple operation, but to a lightkeeper, precautions have to be made. The not-so-average globes, which produce over 10 times more light than an average household one, have been known to explode, so a safety mask and gloves are worn. Another reason for the gloves is if bare hands touch the globe, it can create a hot spot. That's when oil from the skin remains on the globe and in turn heats up more than the rest, causing a weak section and possibly an explosion. John's responsibilities at Eddystone Point are a reflection of the work done at most light stations by their keepers.
Duties of all the lights is number one is the tower. The lights to be the first priority. Make sure it's going, make sure the lenses are clean. The motors are all in good nick and working order. And then you've got your maintenance, your station maintenance. You've got grounds to look after. Just in general, everything on the station. You're responsible for everything.
In earlier days of lighthouses, the keepers had a few more responsibilities. They had to look after the well-being of their families, There was no way of transporting a sick patient to seek medical care until the next supply ship, and even then, the voyage back to civilization could take weeks. At Eddystone Point, there's a reminder of the isolation, a grave. It bears the name of Walter McFarlane Kirkwood. He died on the 11th of March 1898, aged just 18 months. It's plain to see that the rugged life endured at the dawn of the lighthouse era has made way for the more civilised existence seen today. There are 4 lighthouses situated about halfway down Tasmania's east coast in the Triabunna and Freycinet Peninsula area. They're Cape Torval, Ile du Nord, Chicken Point and Point Home lighthouses. They were built in the early 1970s to replace the lower and much less accessible Cape Forrester light, which was decommissioned on the 17th of November 1971. It had served as an aid to mariners since the 5th of October 1917. The newer light's primary function is to serve the ships travelling to Triabunna to pick up wood chips for export, and of course for all ships making their way down the east coast to the many southern ports and beyond. This is a sight few people have seen. Tasman Island, near Cape Pillar in Tasmania's southeast. This awesome sight of cliffs and outcrops is a daunting sight for a lightkeeper's first outpost. One wonders how anyone could have lived here with its sheer cliffs soaring 275 metres above sea. And with the landmass below, the same drop as the height above, it is truly unique in the world's geography. Once accessible only by boat for resupply, it now has helicopters for the purpose. It seems the blustering conditions on Tasman are always there, even on fine days. The wind generator has once again replaced the throbbing diesels, except for a backup unit to power the light. And the technicians sometimes have to do modifications, for each one is placed in different environments. With Tasman, the wind comes from every direction off the cliffs. The light tower itself is all steel. Established in 1906, the curved steel plates were made in England and shifted piece by piece in boats to the island. The same with the houses, now overgrown since demanning in 1976. They now stand as monuments to the workmanship of that era. The original lighthousing was replaced due to continual maintenance, and also the prisms with the new computerised system. You wouldn't blame anyone for not wanting to paint the top of the old rusting metal one, or for that matter, the tower itself. The unfavourable task in 1906 would have been how to get anything to the top of the island, but this was achieved with a haulage way and landing stage. To lift the items up the 1-in-1 gradient over the 300-metre climb, a horse was used. With the assistance of a cable drum, it would take 8 hours to get the trolley up with a load. In later years, a diesel winch was introduced. The landing stage still remains at Anchor Rock, but the sea and time have taken their toll. One of the old wicker baskets still remains, along with most of the machinery. But the life this once brought has gone. Tasman Island is the bleakest place you'd ever want to live. But all lightkeepers who once manned here have fond memories. And to every sailor who's seen her light, to know Hobart was near would have been a welcome sight.
The lighthouse, standing so straight and tall, shows its magnificence against the sea wall. The light, flashing its warning for many a year, stands solid and tall, as new as the day it was put here. The wind whistles loudly and bashes its walls, but the lighthouse defies it and keeps standing tall. the memories it must hold of light keepers old and new, happy and sad stories it could tell you. Today, the lighthouse still stands, still flashing away, warning the sailors to watch the way.